Okay, so here, as we discussed yesterday, that we have different types of functions. In different ways we can declare the functions. Mainly, there are two types of function. One is a named function, and another is anonymous function, which is unnamed function. It is also known as unnamed function. Inside anonymous function, there are different types which we'll be discussing. One is like anonymous function, a function which will not have any kind of name will be known as anonymous function. And then we also have an arrow function, which is also known as a fat arrow function, which we'll again discuss, like how do we declare the arrow function and how do we declare an anonymous function. So till now we have declared, we have seen like what is named function, where we use a traditional way to declare the function by using a function keyword and then function name. This is also known as a function declaration. This is also known as function declaration. That means we are declaring the function in a function declaration way, which is a traditional way of declaring the function. That means we define a function by using a function keyword and then function name, and it can also take an optional parameter, right? So that is what we have seen yesterday over here. It can take a parameter. We can also define without parameter the function. Sometimes like some of the function will not take any kind of parameters, so that also we can define it inside the TypeScript. But these are like a function declaration way. That means declaring a function in function declaration way, right? That means a traditional way. Now let's see the next part of the function declaration, which is an anonymous function. It is also known as function expression. So there can be a question like, what is difference between function declaration and function expression? So we have anonymous function. What happened in terms of anonymous function is it will be an unnamed function. That means a function which will not have any name. A function which will not have any name is known as anonymous function. It is also known as a function expression. It is also known as function expression. What is meant by function expression is the definition of function expression is whenever we declare a function. Function declaration is like we have to declare in traditional way, where we have to use a function keyword. We have to also provide a function name, optional parameter that you can provide it, and then a block of code will go inside the curly braces. Now, in terms of function expression says that it generally known as like in terms of function expression, if I talk about in terms of the documentation that I've prepared over here. So let me find it. Just give me. So in terms of function like I have also given the definitions over here. You can go through with it. But if you see like different ways in which we can declare a function is right. So here we have a type of function, different types of functions that we can declare. The first one was that we have seen using a function keyword and then the function name that we can define is known as a function declaration. And second we have is known as function expression. These are like function declaration itself, right? There are the different types of functions that we have. One is named function. We have already seen like what is named function. So a named function is one of that we write the code and then we use whenever we need it by referencing its name. So when we have seen like whenever we have to call the function, we call it by using the name of the function, right? So named function is that way. Then anonymous function, it says that in terms of anonymous function, we say that a function which will not have any name. If the function is not having any name, then how can we call it later? Like whenever we require to use the function that will be declaring using an anonymous function, then how can we call those function in the later part of our session, like coding? So what function, this is also known as function expression. So function expression says that whenever we declare a function, we declare a function without any name of the function, and that function we store inside a variable. So here we define a function using a variable and store the return value in that variable. Okay, what it meant by this is, in terms of anonymous function, we can define a function in TypeScript without giving it a name. This nameless function is referred to an anonymous function. A variable must be assigned to the anonymous function. What is meant by that is, whenever we declare a function, in terms of function expression way, we declare a function without providing any name and assign it to a variable. And assign it to a variable. That variable becomes the name of the function. Okay. So what do we do in terms of function expression is, in terms of function declaration, we declare the complete value, which is starting with a function keyword, then we declare a function name and we add some kind of parameter. And inside that, we write a body of the function. Whereas in terms of function expression, we declare a function, and that function will store inside a variable. And the variable name, whatever we provide, will become the function name going forward. Let's see the syntax and then you will understand it better. So if you see the syntax in terms of function expression is, we can, let's start it with like this. So we can define a function first. If you see, the syntax, so what will happen is we can define a function. Let's say we can define a variable for that function, which is, okay, first let's define the function, and then it can take an optional parameter as well, which is similar to the function declaration that we have seen over here in terms of named function. So we define a name, and then it can take an optional parameter. But we started over here by using a function keyword, function name, and then parameter. Whereas in terms of function expression, it will start with a function, but will not have any kind of name. Okay. So for function, we will not have any kind of name. Is known as anonymous function or function expression way of declaring a function. The function keyword, then it can take a parameter, and also it can have a code, block of code that we want to write inside the function. And as it says, as per the definition, we declare a function without providing any name and assign it to a variable. That means this complete function will assign to a variable. And going forward, now this variable that we have declared, this variable becomes the function name. Whatever the value that this function returns, whatever the value that this function returns or print any kind of value, that will get stored inside a variable. And to call this particular function, call the anonymous function, we'll use the variable whatever we have declared. So how do we call this? In terms of named function, we call the function by using a function name. Whereas in terms of anonymous function, we call the function by using the variable that we have declared and assigned the function to. Okay. Here we declare a function by using without a function name. So function keyword, and then it can take an optional parameter. And we can write a block of code inside the curly braces. And whenever we have to call this function, whatever the variable that we have stored the function, that variable will becomes the function name. So that variable will become the function identifier. Here, in terms of this, the function identifier is the name of the function. In terms of anonymous function, the function identifier will become the variable that we have declared over here to assign the function to. Okay. Any confusion in terms of this? Let's see an example and then probably you will understand it better. So how do you declare a function? By using just a function keyword, and then let's say it can take a parameter. As I said, like it can take an optional parameter as well. So we can provide some kind of things, let's say, which is A, B, and C. Okay, A, B, and C. This is taking, this is accepting as a parameter. What type of parameter we have declared over here? It is saying has any return type. That means it 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 basically has any kind of value. That means this A, B, and C can accept any type of data type that we can declare, because we have not provided any data type. So let's try to provide it over here as colon number, as we have gone through earlier, like where do we define the number, so that we can make it more specific in terms of what is the data type that we are trying to use. Okay, and I'll just say it as, let's say, console.log. So make the sum of all the value that we are trying to use, which is console.log a plus b plus c. And as we have given the number, so it's always better we can provide the return type as well. If you are not providing anything, which in terms of, let's say, if you're not providing number and data type and so on, what we can do is we can leave it as it is, so that whatever the TypeScript will automatically be able to identify what is the data type that we are using based on the value that we assign to a variable, based on the value or based on the argument that you provide. Okay. And as per the syntax, we have to store this inside a variable. So we can just say it as, let's say, const sum equals to function, and then this value. Now you know that we are just trying to print the value over here. We're just trying to print. We are not trying to do any other things, right? We're just trying to print. So there is no need of providing the return type over here. If you want to provide the return type, we have to provide it as a void, because we are basically not trying to return anything. We're directly printing the value over here. Okay. I think some we have already declared somewhere, so I'll just use it someone over here. Okay. Now what did we do? Let's try to understand. This is an unnamed function, so we do not have any name of the function. It can optionally take again the parameters, and can have a return type. We can also declare the return type. If it is only like we are trying to print the value, then it will be void, because we are not trying to return anything. If you want to return, then whatever the data type that you want to provide in terms of return, you can provide it. Else it will also do the type inference, where it will automatically identify based on the data that we have provided. Okay. Now earlier we have seen that whenever we have to call this function inside any other function, or any time going forward in our code, we directly use the function name. In terms of anonymous function, we use the variable that we have declared to call the function. So how do we call the function over here? Is by just using the variable name that we have used over here. Okay. Now it is saying that we require 3 arguments, right? So we can provide it over here. Let's say 12, 56, 45. That's it. So this is basically an anonymous function, which is having no name for a function. And whenever we do not have any name for a function, we have to assign that into a variable. And that variable will become the name of the function, which we can use for calling at any point of time whenever we require to call the function. Okay, now let's try to print the value. Try to print and see what is happening over here. So we are in the functions itself. So if you see over here, it is displaying us the value, which is 113, 113 in terms of this. Let me also write anonymous function. So here we can see for the anonymous function, we have it has given us a result which is 113. So this is one way in which we declare a function. This is another way. Other way we have seen like by using the function name. This is we have without function name. So then in terms of you might be having a question like what kind of method that we can use generally in terms of test automation. So it depends. Either we can use an anonymous function or you can use normal function which we have declared it as a function name, function name, and so on. If you hover over on um, this basically a function, right? So every function at the later point of time, at the end, every function will be converted into this format, which it says that like function and function name. So here also internally, every function will be converted into a function name. This someone will be placed something like this, which is function and someone. Okay. So even if you write an anonymous function, that will internally be converted into the function and function name. Like internally be having some similar significance. However, we go for writing, we go for declaring the function in a function declaration. But there are different options that TypeScript has given us to declare the function in different way. One is the function declaration by using a function name. Other is anonymous function, which is without function name. This is first one, which is a part of anonymous function, and then we have another type of function which is known as arrow function. Okay, arrow function. We also it is also known as a fat pipe symbol or fat arrow function. This symbol that we see over here is a function, basically a symbol for the function. Okay, this equal to and greater than symbol that we see over here is a symbol for declaring a function in terms of TypeScript and JavaScript. In terminologies, it basically known as arrow function or fat arrow symbol as well. Now let's see how do we declare an arrow function. So this is also a part of anonymous function. That means again, we do not have to use function name over here, right? So in terms of arrow function, why do we use arrow function? Because arrow function basically reduces the number of lines of code. So if you see over here in terms of arrow function, so what it says is, it is used to shorten the code. Here, we do not use the function keyword and instead we use the arrow symbol. Okay, what is under that? Just let's see, like we'll try to do some kind of validation over here. Let me also try to copy paste to save the time. So what happened in terms of arrow function is, um, as per the definition, it says that it is basically used to shorten the code. That means here, whenever we declare a function, we do not even use the function keyword. This arrow function is the next level of anonymous function. So in terms of anonymous function, we declare a function by providing the function keyword, by using the function keyword, and then we do not use the function name over here. Till now, whatever we have seen, first one was declaring a function, using a function keyword, and then function name. Second was anonymous function, which is by using a function keyword without using any function name. And third is arrow function. Let's try to see the syntax for this arrow function. Okay. In terms of arrow function, the syntax is again similar, but only the difference that we have in terms of arrow symbol is, let's see the difference over here. So the difference is in Here in terms of anonymous function, how do we declare it? So we have declared, let's say, const variable equals to function keyword, and then some kind of parameter. It can take optionally parameter, and inside this we'll be writing a block of code. So here we'll be writing a block of code, right? Code will go inside the curly braces. Now in terms of arrow function, if you see, everything is similar. Everything is similar except this function keyword we have removed, you know, inside the arrow function. So in terms of arrow function, whenever we declare an arrow function, we do not even use the function keyword. So if you see over here, we do not even use the function keyword. We have removed the function keyword from here. But after the parenthesis, we place it as a symbol, which is arrow symbol that we have seen over here, which is a fat arrow symbol. Equals to and greater than is this particular symbol, known as a fat arrow symbol, also known as an arrow function in JavaScript and TypeScript. So if you see over here, we have, this is again a next level of anonymous function where we do not even use a function keyword. The only difference between an anonymous function and arrow function is also an anonymous function where we do not provide the name and we store it inside a variable. But at the time of declaration, we do not use a function keyword to declare a function for arrow function. And after the parenthesis, instead of this, we remove the function keyword, and after the parenthesis, we put it as an arrow symbol just before the curly braces starts for the function. Okay. So this is how we declare an arrow function. And at the time of calling, again, we'll just call as we have called over here with the variable. So the variable becomes the identifier for the function. That means the name of the function that we have declared over here. And that will become the complete values. That will become the complete function name, and we can call with the variable that we have. The only difference between the anonymous and arrow function is, in arrow function, we do not even use function keyword, and we replace it with a fat arrow symbol, but after the parameter. If you see the function keyword, we have declared before declaring any kind of parameter or parenthesis, and arrow symbol, we declare it after parenthesis. Whether it takes a parameter or not, that is other part, but parenthesis is, what is parenthesis? Is this symbol, which is a method symbol. So this is known as a parenthesis, right? So after this parenthesis, we have declared a pad pipe symbol, and this function becomes the arrow function. Now to call the function, we'll be using a variable and then the method symbol or parenthesis. Let's try to see an example. So let's say we'll declare a function where we'll just provide a parenthesis over here. Okay, and this parenthesis will take, let's say, two parameters, which is a and b. And how do we declare arrow function? By just providing an equal to and greater than symbol. And whatever the value that we have to write will go inside the curly braces. So let's say, as we have given the example over here, so we can just consider this example itself. What we can say is, this value is taking, let's say, a number as a parameter, a number as a data type, and then this b is also taking a number as a data type. Okay, and we want to validate it whether a which one is greater than, like whether a is greater or b is greater. If we just want to find out like the greatest number of all the two values that we are trying to declare. So how can we find those values? So let's try to see it over here. First thing that we also have to store it inside a variable. So we can say it as, let's say, greatest among two. Now we have to write a condition. The condition will be, let's say, if a is greater than b. If a is greater than b, then we can directly say it as, then we can print it as, or return the value, which is something like, let's say, CLG, and then we can say it as like A is greater than B. Okay. If it is not greater than, if A is not greater than B, then just print it as like B is greater than A. Okay. So what we have done is we have generally, this is again one of a function that we have written. And inside that we have written some kind of values over here. And then again, this function we have stored inside a variable. We have given a name as greatest. Okay. And here, if you see, we have just declared a parenthesis. We started with parenthesis itself, and inside that it has taken the pool of parameters, which is A and B. And after that, you see this symbol is a representation of the arrow symbol. So if you remove this, then it will start throwing you an error. So there are two ways in which we can declare an anonymous function. One is, if you place it over here, function, this will also work. Okay. If you place it over here, a function, this will also work. And if you remove the function, then you have to place the arrow symbol over here, which is equals to and greater than symbol. So it also represents a function that we are trying to write inside by using JavaScript or TypeScript. And how do we again call the function? By using the variable name that we have seen in terms of syntax. So whenever we use a variable name, we see that there are a couple of parameters that it requires. So that we can provide it, let's say 9 and 7. Okay, so what it will do is whatever the condition, whatever the logic that we have written inside the function, whatever the business logic that we have written inside the function, based on the logic, it will try to generate the report, try to generate the return result for this particular function. So we see over here, it is saying that A is greater than B. And if we just change it to, let's say, 9 and 17, then our logic will say it as B is greater than A, B is greater than. Okay. So this is how we generally declare a function in terms of arrow, like that is known as arrow function. Why? Because we have a symbol known as arrow over here. And we do not use function keyword at the time of declaring the arrow function. Okay. Any question in terms of anonymous function?
So what is base practice here? So we should use traditional way or the arrow or the anonymous one?
Right. So it depends on what we are trying to do. So whenever we go for, whenever we basically go for writing the method inside a class, we mostly follow the traditional way, which is by declaration of function name. But this is not something that we cannot write anonymous function as well. So it depends on like what the organization is following and what the rules that they have set up. Second thing is, most of the time we'll be using named function where we'll provide the name of the function. But whenever we write a test case in terms of Playwright, whenever we write a test case, in general, we'll be writing a test inside a function. So if I just try to show you, so this is something that we have written a test case. So whenever we write a test case using a Playwright, we start by writing something like this, which is test, and then we provide a function over there. This test is a function available inside Playwright, which takes a couple of parameters. One is title, and second, it takes as a function. So whenever we declare a function inside this at that point of time, mostly either we'll be using an anonymous function using the keyword function, or we'll be using an arrow function over here whenever we write the test in terms of Playwright. In terms of Playwright, this writing the test by test function, it requires a function which will never be declaring using the traditional way. That means using like function and function name. Okay, so there mostly we'll be using an anonymous function, either by using a function keyword or by using a arrow function. But in general, if we talk about, we'll be using all the three combination as and when it requires. Whenever we create a class and inside that, like whenever we create a class in terms of TypeScript and Then we declare a method inside the TypeScript. At that point of time, we'll be using a traditional way where we can provide the identifier, that means a function name as well, so that we can so that everyone will understand that we have written a function or a method inside the class. And again, whenever we have to write in general, like the test that we have shown inside, writing the test cases in terms of playwright, will be going with either a normal anonymous function or an arrow function. Okay, but as we will be progressing through in terms of the framework in playwright, we'll see like most of the time we'll be using a traditional function um, in terms of writing the function by using a function name. Again, all these things that we have is very important in terms of interview as well as writing the test cases in terms of playwright. That's where we have to go through each and every ways, like each and every different ways in which we can declare the function. Okay, does it answer your question?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Now we also have couple of more things to discuss over here in terms of TypeScript. That is known as that is a part of function itself, and it is known as we define a function, we define some kind of parameter over here, right? Here we define a parameter which is a and b. We have defined it over here. So in the same way, we have parameterized function, non-parameterized function. The function which do not have any kind of parameter is known as non-parameterized function. Now there are a couple of more which is known as optional parameter. Optional parameter and default parameter. This is a part of, again, a function. You can use any kind of function, either a named function, unnamed function, or arrow function. We can use anything. In terms of functional parameter, optional parameter or default parameter, we'll be having different kind of things over here. So let's start by writing the function. So we'll write a named function over here. I'll just say it as, let's say, function add one, and then we provide some kind of value, which is, let's say, a, b, and c, right, over here. And then we'll just print it out saying that console a plus b plus c. Okay. So what happened in terms of this is whenever we call this function by using the function name, you'll see that it says that we require a three different parameter. It is saying expected 3 arguments, but got 0, right? Because we have not provided any value over here. Now, let's say if you want to say something over here that few of the parameter are optional. That means we do not require it mandatory to fill it out over here. So let's say first the default parameter, and then we'll go for the optional. So in terms of default parameter, it says that we can assign the value over here as well, which is, let's say, c equals to 0. I've just made it c equals to 0. So if you do not provide any kind of value for the default parameter at the time of calling, it will automatically consider the value that we have declared over here. This is known as a default parameter. That means we have declared a value which is default in nature. If you do not provide any value for the c, then this c will consider the value which is equals to 0. Let's try to see over here, which is 5 and 6. Now we know that there are 3 different parameters we have declared over here, but it is not asking to declare again the third parameter, because this c equals to 0 that we have given over here, it considered as a default parameter. That means if you provide the value, then at that point of time, whatever the value that you have provided over here, it will consider that value. But if you do not provide the value, then whatever the default value that you have given, it will consider the c as a default value, whatever the value that we have defined it over here. Now let's say try to try to execute the code and let's see what is happening over here. So if you try to print it, it's saying like 10 plus 6 plus 5, which is 21, right? But if you remove this 10, at that point of time also, it is not throwing us any kind of error over here. Because if you do not provide the value, whatever the value that you have declared by default will consider the value as C and it will be added over here. So now if you see the result, it will throw us will be at 12 because 5 plus 6 is 11 and then 1 that we have declared over here by default is added over here along with the 11 plus 1 equals to 12 value. Okay, so this is known as default parameter. Whenever we do not provide the argument, whatever the default value that we have given will be considered as the value for the variable that you have declared over here. Okay, now if you hover over on this add, right, this add function over here, either over here inside the function name itself or at the time of calling. You can see one difference over here. Earlier we have seen, earlier on this, if you try to hover, it says that A is number, B is number, right? We had declared 3 numbers over here. If you hover over on this, it says that A is number, B is number, and C is number. Now, in terms of this, if you see, it is saying that A is any, as we have not given anything, so that is fine. B is also any, or let's also declare the number as well. Colon number. Now, if you see over here, it is saying A is number, B is number, but on C, there is a question mark available over here, right? Earlier, this question mark was not available. Whenever you see this question mark is available on any of the parameter, that is known as an optional parameter. Whenever you see any parameter is having a question mark along with the variable name or parameter name, then that parameter is considered as an optional. So whenever we declare automatically the value, which is the value that we have declared over here is number, which is equals to 1. This considered the default value for this particular C. And that is why it has not asked us to enter the value, which is C, because it considered the value as an optional parameter. And as we have given the value, as we have already defined the value, which is default equals to 1. So even though if you do not provide the value, it will automatically consider the default value that we have declared over here. Now, let's say if you just remove this particular things, 1, then it will start throwing us an error saying that expected 3, but got only 2. Okay, but if you again assign the value, which is a default value, then it will consider that as an optional. That is what known as optional parameter. We can also declare this by just saying like this. How do we declare the optional parameter? Let's make it as add2. Here also make it as add2. And then we can say over here that C question mark. That's it. That means it is saying that we have this parameter, which is C over here. C is possibly undefined. That's fine. Make it over here, something like this. So what happened in terms of this is, it says that this parameter, whatever the parameter that we have defined as a third parameter, is non-mandatory. Though we defined over here and we have just placed the question mark. Whenever you place a question mark on any of the parameter, that becomes an optional parameter. So that's where you see over here that we have not declared the third parameter, but it is considered this as an optional parameter. Now, if you try to run this, try to run the value, you'll see not an NaN, which is not a number because the C value is not defined over here. So you can remove it from here as well if you would like to, because C is optional parameter over here, or if you simply would like to print the value of C, then we can also print the value that you are trying to provide, which is C. So what will happen in this case is like A plus B will be defined, and then it will say the value of C is undefined, because by default, any type of variable that we declare in JavaScript and TypeScript will have a data type as undefined. If we do not define any value, if we do not initialize any value, then by default, the value data type of the variable will be undefined. Okay. Now, if you try to enter some kind of value, let's say 10 over here, at that point of time, as it is like optional parameter, but whatever the value that you provide over here, it will go and place it inside the variable that we have declared over here, which is C. But if you make it along with the question mark, then that variable becomes, or that parameter becomes an optional parameter. Okay. Any question in terms of optional and default parameter?
Yeah, Praveen, in this function, oh sorry, default parameter, if we enter this C equal to 1 also, and then here we add one variable also, we provide the value. What will be the result for like
This one,
here
right?
also if you
Right. So we have seen this, like we did this as well. So whatever the value that you provided over here, this value will, the default value will get overridden by this value.
okay.
Okay. So whatever the value that you provide at the time of calling, the default value will get overridden. So you'll see like 15 plus 6 plus 5, which will be 26 as a value over here that we can see. So at the time of calling, if you are trying to provide the value, then the default value will get overridden.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay. So any other question from anyone? Okay. So that's about the functions that we have in terms of TypeScript. It is exactly similar that we have in terms of JavaScript as well. But only the difference is we define a type as well in terms of TypeScript. Apart from that, everything is entirely similar. There is no difference at all in terms of JavaScript and TypeScript. Both are almost similar. The only thing that we have defined is data type for TypeScript. Okay. Now let's move to the other part that we have is we have completed the functions. And we will be moving towards arrays to understand what is array, how do we declare an array, and uh, then we'll see like different types of array as well. We have how do we declare the array in different ways. So let's go and create a folder, create a file that will just say it as, let's say, arrays.ts. Okay. So what is in general arrays? So at the time of going through with the data type, we, if you go to the data type section where we have said that there are different types of data type that we have. Primitive data type, which comes under, which is like number, string, boolean, null, undefined, any. And non-primitive data type, which is like array, object, function, strings, and so on. Strings and so on, right? So array is also a data type. Whenever we in any of the programming language, array is also a type of data type in the programming language, whatever the programming language that we use. Okay, so let me shut off this.